for the speakers before me. It's a beautiful foundation already, what they were speaking about. So my talk is now, instead of focusing on dreams, is focusing on the practice of darkness meditation. For my background, I'm a clinical psychologist for more than 20 years, specialized in working with trauma, especially working with different methods like body-based transpersonal psychotherapy. I have a doctorate from the US and UK in transpersonal psychology and specialize in developing training and education in a postgraduate level in Germany and internationally. I'm a core member of the International Institute of Consciousness Exploration and Psychotherapy in Freiburg, and together with international colleagues, we are developing currently transpersonal psychotherapy training, and we want to include also training in altered states of consciousness for healing using endogenous and exogenic induction methods. I'm developing this with my colleague Dietrich Franke, who is also sitting here in the audience. A brief outline, I want to cover the background that I'm working on. So this is a very practice-based presentation that I will give you. I'm also a qualitative researcher. I'm specialized in embodied phenomenology. So you should maybe imagine that it's more like phenomena that I try to describe, and the importance is that you get a bodily feeling. So this is my focus in my work and in my research, to make experiences available. So maybe you could imagine that you sit in a dark cave and you're already so long in the dark cave that you're in altered states of consciousness, and that you maybe can listen and see my presentation in such a way. Because it's very qualitative, it's very subtle what I will present. So I will give some details on the background of the darkness meditation, neurobiological impacts, how it was used or is used in shamanic traditions, and also going in mythological and archetypal dimensions. I'm also specialized in Jungian psychology. I will give a brief personal account and will draw some conclusions. So where I'm coming from is the field of transpersonal psychology. I'm a clinical psychology, and transpersonal psychology includes all dimensions of human experience, also including spiritual and ecological experiences. And one core approach is to use altered states for consciousness for transpersonal psychotherapy. It is very much also drawing on Stan Grof's work of holotropic states of consciousness and holotropic breath work. In that way, this holotropic paradigm, including all dimensions. The core methods that are used is the goal to move beyond ego, to have numinous, infinite, or sacred experiences. And in the therapy, all dimensions are addressed and worked with, especially also a transgeneral perspective and an archetypal perspective to try to access ancient knowledge and connect with ancient methods of healing. This is like the aim of connecting with multidimensional consciousness in psychotherapy, especially also working with trauma clients. So the practices from consciousness constriction to consciousness expansion, this will be the core in every session and also the core of exploration in the research. I especially do intervention research. It is always a topic of ego-death experiences and rebirth experiences induced through different methods like movement and dancing, fasting, or darkness meditation that I will go into soon after. It's offering or evoking an experience of the sacred and utilizing altered states of consciousness, coming from holos towards wholeness, using holotropic states. Also what Jung called the real therapy, also the goal of ego dissolving, moving beyond ego, especially in clinical psychology. This means, of course, also moving beyond the symptom level towards multidimensional consciousness. That has always been the role of the shaman or healer or visionary or warrior or leader, to come out of the constriction and open or offer up expanded states of consciousness. And for example, darkness, of course, is found throughout history in all cultures, especially for initiation and illumination. Dark caves have been found for thousands of years as alchemy transform practice, as initiation, and also as a connection to reconnect to Mother Earth in that way. This is an earth-based practice, and this is also one major focus in my work, to also try to reintegrate and rebalance divine feminine wisdom. Some visual examples from historic practices, like in the Egyptian pyramids, initiations, shamanic initiations in the caves, of course. The essence in the Dead Sea area have used it. The catacombs in Rome. Of course, the Greek cultures, the rites of Eleusis. So what we teach and what we also teach in the practice and then in the psychotherapy training, that the professionals, but also the clients, can learn different forms of endogenic and exogenic induction methods. Just to give a brief overview, they can occur spontaneously or induced. Most people describe this especially out of nature, some nature experiences with altered states of consciousness. Exogenic induced, of course, through dancing, hypnosis, drumming, rave, and of course through substances. And endogenic induced in our field would be especially like working with near-death experiences, but also working with prenatal and perinatal material, as Stan Grof did it in the holotropic breathwork when he developed the birth matrices. We work a lot with that, especially with trauma patients, because what is experienced prenatal and perinatal often reflects the whole life, the biography of the patient. And endogenic induced, it can happen under birth, or it happens under birth for mother and child. So we always say also, especially to the clients, at least everybody had one altered states or psychedelic endogenic experience. It can happen in near-death experiences, in severe accidents or severe extreme experiences. Holotropic breathwork is one golden standard method in transpersonal psychology, but of course also other methods, and I focus on darkness meditation, especially also trying to connect with the divine feminine, with the archetypal feminine qualities, and of the knowledge, of course. Clinical contraindications, as usual, as also for other induction methods, needs to be carefully explored before going into such experiences with patients. Also, the impact variables are, of course, similar to using psychedelics, exogen-induced or endogen-induced. That would be the purity and dosage, or in the case of the darkness, the duration of the darkness retreat. Then the personality structure, the setting, a safe place, a good guide, and afterwards the integration of the experiences. So what is important to understand, if you have no experience, is there somebody who has experience with darkness meditation? A few, yeah. So what is important to know, if you have not done it, it is meditation with eyes open. That means you are for a prolonged time in a dark room or with a blindfold so that you cannot see anything. But a crucial thing that makes this altered state of consciousness very intense is that you have the eyes open, because then you come into a process through brain functions that the brain tries to see, and then slowly you have to give up that you cannot see, and then the altered states come in. And also, of course, the experience when suddenly the visual channel is shut down and going through the borderlands into the altered states. It was always used in temples, in caves, as initiations to access ancient knowledge. This is one goal in our work, also to move beyond the symptom level and rather help the clients or patients connect with a larger wisdom than their symptom and try to help them heal themselves. and of course also master initiations and receive sacred wisdom and transmit that, of course, then to others. So why is it called a high-level ancient practice? Because especially in Tibetan Buddhism, it is very advanced, only for advanced disciples, because it can be very intense, anxiety-evoking experience. So there needs to be really a stable personality structure, and also experience of difficult trips or tripping, and also guidance and orientation. Because, of course, what happens in darkness meditation, slowly, after 3 days, it starts already, that the time and space cannot be really felt anymore. Somehow you can feel your body, but you cannot really feel your body, so it becomes really fluid, where's the end and where's the beginning of the next. So it's a very fluid experience, where there needs to be a structure to be held. So in Tibetan Buddhism, this is a secret practice, and only a little bit of knowledge is available for lay people or for normal people. But the terms that I use say already a lot of what it is about. In Dzogchen, it is called breakthrough, cutting through delusion, or direct crossing, or black quintessence. And in the Tantric tradition, it's called the 6 Vajra yogas. There's barely research, so there's not really something to say about the concrete neurophysiological impacts. So what is the goal? Eyes open, what I said already, to achieve expanded wisdom. And what happens is that after, let's say, like 3 days, a feeling of a huge clarity arises, a feeling of accessing higher level or ancient wisdom, a feeling of connecting with something bigger, also with this feeling of the dark matter as a divine, as a primordial contact, a feeling of oneness, feeling connected with everything when this fluidity begins of that the body borders become changing, and a feeling of coming back or connecting to a true nature, or what in shamanism they often call the original nature, original medicine, how the soul came into this life or in this body. So in that way, primordial knowledge, wisdom can be accessed for wisdom, but also for healing. It can have an experience of a huge present, really like there's no border anymore, everything is connected. Also like experiencing life and death in the same moment, this kind of feeling of presence. Or often it is described like I experience total emptiness, or at the same time I experience total fullness, total abundance, like what the Buddhists also say, the full and the emptiness at the same time, or like birth and death, like at the same, experiencing this edge. It can have an experience of freedom or feeling free and relieved from all constraints. And then after a longer period of darkness meditation, then there can be this experience of suddenly feeling to see the darkness within the darkness. It is described like I see the darkness in the darkness, which then becomes like feeling like a light. It's not like seeing really a light, but it feels like suddenly in this darkness there comes this light, this divine state. I use this always in my teachings, in my workshops, when they are experiential. This is a specific mindfold. You can see it on the right side. So you can have the eyes open. And I use it when I do workshops for 5 days, let's say. I use it every day for 2 hours or so. And people already, participants already can have profound experiences. So what I want to say also, of course, we cannot go 10 years in the retreat to have this experience, but in a few days there can be already profound ideas. And what I teach always to practice it at home, of course, like the other speaker said, it needs practice. The more profound it will be, of course, and the more practice you have, I use it in my daily life. I have always the mindful with me. And the more practice you have, the quicker, of course, you can go to much deeper levels. What I said already, it's like a seeing the darkness in the darkness. It is a revealer. It feels also like in this darkness, nothing can be hidden. All corners can be seen. Nothing can be put under the carpet. It is described as the second light, which is a darkness, which is not a light, but it feels like a second light. And this feels like profound divine, like all-encompassing. And then, of course, also working with darkness and silence in combination intensifies everything. What you also, when I work with psychedelics, the periods of silence, like a magnifier, like an intensifier of all the experiences. And also then it feels like that you can feel everything, that you can hear everything, even if there's no movement, that you can hear all energy. Of course, there's a lot of mystical experience. There's a lot of mystical writing and poetry, just one from Lao Tzu. Mystery and imagination arise of the same source. The source is called darkness, darkness within darkness, the gateway to all understanding. That is what I would say. This is like a profound experience that you can have in a few days in a dark retreat. Why I talk about this here in this conference is, of course, the interest in the neurobiological impact of the prolonged darkness meditation. Mantak Chia, who has a big dark retreat center in Thailand, has written a lot about that. And describe the different stages, how the neurobiological changes happen. It is like he works with 10 days or 12 days darkness retreats. So the first 3 days is like a melatonin stage, like the people are calming down and like emptying from daily life things and entering a first stage of opening up to all that states. Then after the third day to the 5th or 6th days, it can intensify, so Pinoline can be activated in the womb. This will be very similar to what the speakers before me talked about the dream tripping. It can also be very close to the experiences described of near-death experience. This is also my own experience. That is very similar method like what I experienced in my near-death experience. And it can be, through this darkness, a very profound feeling of connecting to a dark primordial matter, or also to the Great Mother, the darkness of the womb, where we come from. Then after the 6 days, 5-MeO DMT can be released, and of course then that will be the feeling of oneness, of love, of compassion, the heart opening, like being one and being loved with everything. This is often the stage in the process where this profound experience comes to see the light in the darkness, the divine, to feel the divine. And in the last stage, only after the 9th or 10th days, then actually endogenous DMT to be released, and what Mantak Chia describes as like a cosmic orgasmic, so that would go more like also in like an erotic or Kundalini-like experience of feeling in that way, in life force, connected, orgasmic, cosmic. I said that already. Examples when it's released, near-death, death experience, extreme situations, prolonged darkness can be one beautiful method to work with such topics on the level of ego death, practicing ego death, but also on the level of course, working with all kinds of trauma to connect with a much deeper and all-encompassing level. I will not go into that into detail. There's a lot structure already given on perinatal matrices by Standroff. I use them a lot when I work in prenatal material with clients on different kinds of trauma. It is very effective, and I now combine it with the darkness, with the blindfold sessions. It's very helpful and effective. my personal account was that in 2004 I survived a tsunami in Thailand with a near-death experience underwater. Then years after, by accident, I found this method of dark retreat meditation, and I did not know it would be so similar to the previous near-death experience, but it was like more or less like I lived through that again, but also like it felt like an archetypal general matter structure of ego death, very deep ego death experience, and also this these strugglings, these birth matrices I experienced, and then this experience of seeing the divine light in the darkness, and then rising like, so this was a tsunami, I was underwater, had underwater near-death experience, could not breathe anymore, and after the tunnel of light, then I rising out of this kundalini, this energy. It was very much the same process as in my dark retreat meditation. And then kind of a oneness, but this fiery oneness, this like kundalini, really like life force, connecting with this life force. The only literature that I find so far for what I'm really interested in is like from Rick Strassman, who focused on the endogenous DMT research. He was especially interested to locate it in the pineal gland. I'm more interested actually in the experience that accompanied with this phenomenon, and I found it also interesting how it was developed to be seen as body-based substance. Of course, the shamanic traditions have used it. I use it also in that way, especially when I want to when I want to work not symptom-oriented, rather archetypal-oriented, to help the patients reconnect with this much bigger vessel of being. But what is always forgotten is, some books talk about seeing in the dark as shamanic practice, but more or less no book I could find, or research at least not, talking about the fertile darkness, the female, the divine feminine level of darkness. And so I feel this is a forgotten dimension. Feels very important for me to reconnect with this quality of darkness in our times, as an archetypal dimension, as a cyclical dimension, and dark moon goddesses, of course, goddess of the night, Medusa, Lilith, all these stories about the moon. And important, I feel, is to see that we have lost like this divine feminine connection to darkness, and especially in Christianity, it is very much put into the bad, evil side, which is totally mistakenly done so, and also reconnecting with these mysteries of life, which begins in the darkness and goes back to the darkness. And the other thing that is really interesting to me in research, and also connected to psychosomatic clinical psychology, is the over-illumination of modern times and light, that we more or less have no possibility to be in darkness. It's quite difficult to have a darkness retreat other than using these mindfuls. So I think it would be important to have research about the impact creating diseases when we are always exposed to light and have not enough time for regeneration in darkness. There's also some interesting research that women became more fertile when they spent every night in a very dark room, when the sleeping room was really dark, that the cycle became balanced, and that they became more fertile. Inanna, Dark Night of the Soul conclusion. I think this is something primordial we should remember, and we can utilize very, very importantly in transpersonal clinical psychology, working with patients, but also, of course, for self-development, to reconnect with a much bigger dimension. Also utilizing this, normalizing this kind of a method, like also building the bridge to psychedelic science. So this is also one important goal that we have in Freiburg, to kind of, on a political meta level, also to help to normalize the use of psychedelics, in endogenic or exogenic induced. And of course, these topics of fearness of darkness, fear of death, fear of the unknown, and of course, fear of the divine feminine would be important to balance and integrate, reintegrate further in our world. This is the paradigm of a holotropic paradigm towards wholeness. This topic, I have written a book chapter and co-edited a book on it. This will come out next week. So if you're interested in this topic, you can hear a little bit more detailed what I talked now very briefly. I'm a forest and a night of dark trees, but he who is not afraid of my darkness will find banks full of roses under my cypresses. I also want to support the divine feminine and women in psychedelic renaissance. I think it's important to balance and bring this aspect into the field also. Thank you very much.